The place people look to for their holiday light needs is Inter-Ray Outdoor Lights. Let the professionals at Inter-Ray decorate the exterior of your home and business without you lifting a hand. Get $100 off a $1,000 purchase. Call 355-5276 and log on to interray.com. Light up your home or business this holiday season with Inter-Ray. Call 355-5276 today.
The place for authentic Indian food is the India Palace. They feature authentic Indian cuisine, have a party hall, and do catering and banquets. Open daily for lunch and dinner, they showcase an excellent lunch buffet at their Chesapeake and Virginia Beach locations. Visit their two locations at 1437 Sam's Drive in Chesapeake off of Battlefield Boulevard and 5600 Virginia Beach Boulevard in Virginia Beach, and online at IndiaPalaceVB.com. On Facebook, look for India Palace Virginia Beach and India Palace Bar and Grill. Dine at the India Palace today.
Stay tuned for the next hour of Justice for All. Justice for All. Don't you love that David Lindley tune? I'll tell you what, professional liar. Talk to the lawyer.
You know, I just keyed in on that. I've been listening. I've heard that song many times now, but I said, wow, professional liar. But, I mean, are all lawyers professional liars?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think all politicians are. We know that for sure.
And most politicians are lawyers.
That was a great show. I'll tell you, that guy, when it was interesting because when he started talking about it when he tried to sell the book, and he said, you're just the publisher said, well, you're just kind of a small time promoter. You're not a big deal. We're not going to be interested in this book. Nobody's going to be interested in this book because you're just small potatoes. Right. And then of course it turns out now the book is out and it got some award out in the Midwest and that kind of thing. And that's kind of what quite honestly, that's kind of what I thought too. I said, well, Pat DeCesar, now who's this guy? But boy, then when I started reading it, and then by the time I finished it, I said, well, that's exactly what all the promoters were back in the day, when he started in the 50s and went all the way through into when he sold his company by 99. It wasn't a big national. Everything was and you know about this too. By the way, I'm here with Greg Hall, our producer. How you doing, Greg?
Hey, I'm great.
Well, you know about this. We were talking about this last night. A lot of his bookings happened. There would be, let's say, a Dick Clark might have an act booked, and they might be they're going to be playing, Philadelphia, and then they're going to go down and play, Morgantown, West Virginia, or something like that. And they might have an open date. And so he would find out, he'd call the agent or something and say, hey, what are you going to do on that Friday night? Or the agent might call him and say, we've got an open date. You want to book this act into the Civic Center or into, what does he call it, the Syria Mosque or whatever, and they go, okay, and he'd get an act. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, and that used to be the great thing about the music business, because you could take some of these smaller cities, smaller venues, and you could catch a band on a leg. You'd get a discount. It would make sense for that local market to pay a normal ticket price, and everybody won. But as Pat mentioned, and of course, we've discussed, you had Live Nation and a lot of these big touring companies buy out all these promoters.
Yeah, and so that's why they were talking, they didn't want to buy the book because they said, well, he's just a small town guy. But, back in those days, it was a regional promotion thing. And then, of course, and we didn't even get a chance. God, that guy he told that story about the Beatles. But if you read the book, you get into a lot of, Alan Freed, the great disc jockey from Cleveland. I mean, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Cleveland, probably mostly because of Alan Freed, the great disc jockey there were really only two national disc jockeys at the time. You had Alan Freed in Cleveland, and you had Dick Clark, who'd moved to the West Coast, and everybody else was kind of, local and regional. And so that's what's really fascinating about this book, and we brought it up a little bit during the show, was because the promoters were small time, and they all were. Even Bill Graham, we think about Bill Graham because he had the Fillmore West, and then he moved to Fillmore East, so he became a national promoter. But really, he was just a West Coast guy. And I remember when I was in high school and college up in Seattle area, was where I grew up. My best friend's brother was there was a company up there called Northwest Releasing, and they were the regional powerhouse there. So there was a regional powerhouse there, and they ran all the concerts in Seattle. That's the way it was in those days.
Well, yeah, what my I didn't have the benefit of reading the entire book like you did, but what some of my big takeaways from the whole thing were, and I think what appeals to a lot of people is the fact that besides 5,000 girls waiting on your plane to land, I mean that had to be a pretty good feeling for the Beatles. But
Ed Sullivan was no dummy. He saw that. He said, "I would get these guys on my show."
Yeah, but you got a guy that had a dream, and he believed in it, and it ended up coming true. And I think that's what people want to see. They want to see these success stories where, hey, I can do that too. And then, of course, like you said, one of the most important things was having a dad that believed in him more than the $5,000, right? And his dad said, hey, you know what? I mean, that was a pretty big risk. I mean, if you told me today that you got to go give $5,000 cash in a brown paper bag to some bartender, I'd say you're crazy. I'm not giving you $5,000 for that.
Amazing, yeah, and his mom too, and he didn't even know that his mom was blind his whole life. Yeah, and you could just tell by the way. And I called him I said, well, you're a hustler. Oh no, I'm not a hustler. So I guess hustler has a different connotation. I think he maybe took that as a negative.
Those Yankees have a different.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. We're justice for y'all. I forgot. If you've just joined us, I'm here with Greg Hall and our engineer D, and we're kind of hanging out on this beautiful afternoon on Saturday. And I'm George Yates, and we've just finished this interview with Pat DeCesar, and we're just kind of talking about the music business. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Also, back in the day, those of us remember in Virginia Beach there used to be the Civic Center down there, the old dome. And we still read about it in the paper now because they talk about, what are we going to do with the old dome site? It's there on Pacific Avenue, right there on between 19th and 20th Street in Virginia Beach. And back in the day, there was a big old geodesic dome there, and it probably seated 3,000 people. I mean, the Rolling Stones played there and did 2 shows in one night.
Wow.
And, they did Hendrix, and, I'm sure, I think the Doors played there. But, I mean, it was a little venue. And, and those are the acts that he booked, and that was during the day. And he also, back in those days when they had AM radio, they would have these touring groups. They would have like 10 groups playing in one night, and they might only come out for one song
That
each.
sounds crazy. I mean,
yeah. They call them top 30 shows.
Think about that for a second. I mean, to me now, if I could go see a big name act in a place where there was only 3,000 people, that would be great. That would be an intimate setting. Back then, that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. If you go to the Sandler Center now, I mean, I saw Joe Bonamassa over at the Sandler Center about a couple of years ago, whenever it was, second row in this little place that holds, a couple of thousand people. It's unreal. Yeah, big concerts are not as fun as they used to be.
Not as appealing. And then, of course, it's just more of the parking, the dealing with some kind of stadium type setting. And it's for some people, but yeah, I like those intimate shows. And man, I bet, with Pat and all his experiences, I mean, it's just crazy. You think about the Beatles for $6.60 a ticket. That just tells you how inflation has worked for back in the day. I mean, getting a big name act for $35,000, but that's, back then that was a lot of money.
I was just thinking when I read that he sold the show out in one day, I was like, oh God, he could have gotten $8 a ticket or $10 a ticket, but he charged a fair price. He bemoans the current concert business now. He said that towards the end, that he thinks it's kind of deplorable the way it is. He talks about in the book where as he he was going to sell his company. He sold his company to a bigger group, and they had a deal cut with Janet Jackson, and she was going to cut her fee from $350,000 to $250,000 per show. It was 2 shows, which meant you're going to save $200,000 on the act. The company that he sold it to said, "Oh no, we're going to go ahead and pay her the $350,000." He said, "Well, why would you pay her $200,000 more than what we've already got her to agree to?" He said, "Because we have a policy that says we don't negotiate with we give them whatever it is they ask for. We give the artist whatever it is they ask for. So what it means is we're just going to charge it out in more ticket. We're going to raise the ticket prices. So now when you try to go to a concert now, it's pretty pricey. You know, what's $150 a ticket?" I took my daughter up to see One Direction last year up in D.C. at
How much were those tickets?
Well, face value, they were over $100. And I think that because I bought mine on StubHub, I don't even want to tell you. I'm embarrassed to tell you how much I paid for them. But you want to go get a ticket to one of those shows now, you know what you're going to pay for a front section ticket to a band like that. You're going to pay hundreds of dollars. It's a secondary market now. People come in and buy all the tickets up and then sell them for a profit on StubHub.
Right, and that's not cool either. The
legalized scalping.
And I don't think I saw this whole thing happen, and Pat and I talked briefly, on the phone about it. This whole, we saw this whole thing kind of take place and replace a lot of things. And I was in Phoenix. I was in Radio Out West at the time. We used to get all these, all the promoters would say, "Hey, give away tickets on the air and promote this show for me." And it was a lot of fun, and people really loved winning tickets. And that whole thing really came to a screeching halt too. There was maybe a few.
You don't see that anymore.
Yeah, you just don't see it anymore. And
the promotion like that, and he talks about that a lot in his book, because see that in those days the DJs were stars.
Yeah.
And kind of like we are now. See, I mean, we are, all people on radio are stars, right? No. No, the disc jockeys were personalities and stars in their own right, and so they would actually co-write the songs, or at least they would get credit for even though they didn't write the song. But they liked promoting it, but the whole business has changed, just like the country's. I mean, it's not always a bad thing. I mean, we have changes. The way of the world, you can't always long for the old days. But I do think that when he doesn't like the way it's changed I think so many people are priced out. I mean, you want to go spend $150 for a concert ticket. You want to go do 2 concert tickets, $300. You say, you know what? I think I'll stay home.
Or it's three, even some cases a lot more for one show. And I mean, you look at the different markets that some of these bands play in, and it doesn't match up with what the average fan, it doesn't fit into their budget.
But they still sell out. So I was talking to somebody about this earlier today. They say, well, it's supply and demand, and what happens is people are still going to pay. Why not? People are going to pay for it, so why not make the money?
A lot of this has to do with and I think it's a great thing overall. I mean, you look at what the just the internet and the online environment has done for bands and musicians. I mean, now we have access to so many more acts than you used to, right? I can just say, "Hey, go check out this," and you can download it off of iTunes or wherever you want. And and part of that has caused, with all the free downloads and things of that nature, that's the labels are trying to make up that money and said, "Hey, now we're going to jack the ticket prices up." So, but yeah, I mean, it certainly has changed since Pat was in. I mean, I'm sure he could go into that for days, talking about how the industry has changed and some of the advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that. If you've just joined us, where we just finished with Pat DeCesar talking about his book Hard Days and Hard Nights, and it was only a 200-page book. And judging by that interview, that whole thing about the Beatles, which isn't even in the book, he says he's going to write another book, a volume 2 or a volume 3. Anyway, so hopefully we'll get him back on the show, and we can, when he writes the next book, I mean, if there's another volume 2, we can get him back on. He's a really interesting guy. He sure told some good stories.
Well, now, George, I have a question for you. Now, for our normal, everyday, our listeners that tune in every week, I mean, I know they get used to a certain theme of the show where, legal matters meet pop culture, but some people might say, well, why'd you pick this guy? But, of course, you have a band, you're big into music, love music, talented musician. You just recently started taking some piano lessons, and you probably have, there's a lot of these songs that by heart, right? That he's promoted back in the day. Any particular artist that you that stuck out that you said, oh, well, I would have liked to meet these guys?
You know, that's another thing about this. He never really hung out with the artist at all. I know you wanted me to ask him that question.
Yeah.
We never got to it because he did have a chance to. He kind of just was on his. He was, but no, he did sit down with Alice Cooper and was impressed with what a businessman he was, and then that his persona, Alice Cooper's shock rock persona on stage, was completely opposite from what he really was. He's actually an arch conservative kind of guy from Scottsdale, Arizona. Or
Yeah, I've
like
met
that
him.
in
He's
real
totally
life.
different
Yeah,
than
he's
what
not
he.
at all what you thought he was.
I
on
know.
stage.
I got ready. I'm like, oh, is this guy going to start biting animal heads off or something? No, he's totally not like that.
But I got a kick out. He was talking about Pat Boone playing, Fats Domino, because Fats Domino. I mean, those of us that I hate to show how old I am, but I mean, do you remember when I used to go to those dome shows? We had. It was segregated. We had segregated water fountains and all that sort of stuff. And this was in the early '60s, and he's talking about in the '50s and early '60s, where a lot of black artists just didn't get their due because of racism and segregation and discrimination. And so, and black artists would have to travel. It's in his book too, and some of the black artists would travel. And they would have to stay in separate hotels than some of the other, the white folks that were traveling with them, eat in different restaurants when they were traveling down south. It was a real ridiculous time in America because so much of the great music was coming from the black artists. And so the only way the music got heard was if Pat Boone, the white artist, covered the Fats Domino's tone. Elvis Presley was really huge because he was a white guy covering, and Chuck Berry was not as popular as he could have been. So, that's the thing that you realize that from that period of time, it's, Bobby Vinton, that he talks about. He actually named his record company Bobby after Bobby Vinton. So that's a great
Boone,
time.
though. Pat Boone doing Fats. I mean, that just
Yeah.
sounds so ridiculous to me.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm still thinking, how did that turn out?
What was the term that I can't remember how did Pat characterize that? It was pretty awful.
It had to have been.
Yeah, Pat Boone was sort of, even Elvis, didn't Elvis kind of shake his hips, and he wasn't even acceptable because he was just a little too rowdy.
But the Beatles, well, I mean, don't they come down to they had like kind of like you had your Elvis fans and your Beatles fans? I mean, wasn't that like kind of a drawing line in the?
I don't know. I
then?
was kind of after Elvis. You know what? I think for us it was. Do you like the Beatles or the Stones? A lot of it was Beatles or Stones, but we liked both Beatles and Stones. We had all the we didn't divide them up. We
Both
had
are
all the
great
Beatles
bands.
records. We had all the Beatles records. We had all the Stones records. We had all the Doors records. We bought them all. We had them all. So we didn't discriminate against those bands, English bands or American bands. They were all good.
Yeah, I mean, a lot.
And then
of
when
great
Hendrix
acts.
came, we had to have Hendrix, and then we had to get the, then the '70s came along, and you had Eagles, and it kind of changed a little bit. The music kind of changed, and it got a little mellower. James Taylor, and some of that more acoustic stuff, and all that really kind of cool rock. A lot of that passed on. You still look back and you go, what was really the golden age of some of that rock music? Like my band, what songs do we really play? And we'll play, obviously songs from all eras, but it's great to go back and play those songs from, that came out between 1965 and 1972. Those Stones songs, Wild Horses, and you'll play Honky Tonk Women, or you play some of these Beatle tunes like Can't Buy Me Love, or She Loves You, Beatles songs, or or you play some of that great, play Crossroads, Cream, or you do All on the Watchtower. You think about when you go listen to a cover band, they're playing a lot of songs from that kind of golden age of rock, from 65, the songs that the bands that, this guy was promoting.
And I mean, that was you look at it and you start looking at, really the history of rock. I mean, that's so many influences came from those acts. I mean, you look at music today and you can just trace the roots.
Anyway, so we're going to, I guess, take a little break here in a little bit, and we'll come back, and in the last 30 minutes, maybe we can kind of talk about what's been going on in the world and who we've got coming up. I know we've got some good guests coming up in the next, some of our shows coming up next week and next month. if you got a comment about the last guest, Pat DeCesar, or Rock Business, or anything else, or you got a question, you're a comment, you're riding down the road or you're at home, give us a call, 454-1650. That's 454-1650. This is Justice for All. I'm George Yates. I'm here with Greg Hall and Dee, our engineer. We're on K-Talk Radio, 1650 AM. We'll be right back after a little break, and we'll be back with some more Justice for All. See ya.
The place people look to for their holiday light needs is Inter-Ray Outdoor Lights. Let the professionals at Inter-Ray decorate the exterior of your home and business without you lifting a hand. Get $100 off a $1,000 purchase. Call 355-5276 and log on to interray.com. Light up your home or business this holiday season with Inter-Ray. Call 355-5276 today.
The place for authentic Indian food is the India Palace. They feature authentic Indian cuisine, have a party hall, and do catering and banquets. Open daily for lunch and dinner, they showcase an excellent lunch buffet at their Chesapeake and Virginia Beach locations. Visit their 2 locations at 1437 Sam's Drive in Chesapeake off of Battlefield Boulevard and 5600 Virginia Beach Boulevard in Virginia Beach, and online at IndiaPalaceVB.com. On Facebook, look for India Palace Virginia Beach and India Palace Bar and Grill. Dine at the India Palace today.
The restaurant we've all been waiting for is here. Introducing Ipan Mano Kitchen. Critically acclaimed chef Silva Sennett and his culinary team specialize in new American Asian cuisine. The very best in Chinese, Japanese, Thai food with an American flair. Open daily for lunch and dinner, Ipan Mano Kitchen is located inside the Patrick Henry Mall in Newport News. Call 249-0033 and log on to ipanmanokitchen.com. Find them on Twitter at Ipan Mano.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog. It's been a hard day's night. I should be sleeping like a log.
Are we back? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I think we really made a good choice of music for this show. It was really cool that we chose that song, right? Because Pat heard it, and he's going, okay, now, that song there.
It pumped him up, you could tell.
It was, and, it was great because, he didn't mention, he's a musician himself. He talked about playing the accordion and all that.
He talked about getting his violin broken.
Oh, yeah. Well, you think about that's Western Pennsylvania,
yeah.
And that is football country.
What are you doing walking around with this violin?
You little baby.
You're supposed to have a football in your hand.
They broke his violin.
It's horrible.
And then he got his accordion, and he got in. But the way he talked about that, yeah, and he was a songwriter, right? So he heard that Beatles song, and he said, the way they do that, yeah. He said that was really special. So that was awesome. So what have we got coming up now? We've had for those of you who've just joined us, I'm George Yates, and this is Justice for All, and we've been on the air now about 7 months.
Yes.
And most of the time we have these guests that, we've had these constitutional law professors and people who've written books about, we had the War of the Whales, and we've had people, we usually it's people that have legal, a book on some kind of legal topic or another. We had
essay, whistleblower, spy hunter. We've had, we
had James Zirin, who's a former U.S. attorney up in New York that wrote that book about the court up there, the Mother Court. I think I've interviewed at least 20 authors in the last 6 months. And all our shows are on YouTube at www.justiceforall. Is that how you can find it on YouTube? Is that our YouTube channel?
Well, you can search Justice for All George Yates, and it pops up right away.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But also, your website has them too.
Oh, yeah, you can go to my website, ghylaw.com.
Yeah, and I think, some of the things that are coming up topic-wise, we're going to do a series on prisons in America. How interesting is that going to be about how they're, some of these for-profit companies, how things operate?
But it'll only be good if people are interested in watching Lockdown. You ever watch Lockdown? Yeah. So, we'll have to kind of watch. We'll have to read this book, have them on, and we got to make it kind of fun, though, right? It's got, I've got an associate or a law clerk that works for me. She's a third-year student at Regent, and she just, whenever I've got to go visit a client in the jail, she goes, can I come? I said, okay. I've taken her to every single jail in this whole area. She just loves going to the jails. She's this lovely Virginia Tech grad, 25 years at Cape Henry, graduate and all this kind of stuff.
She's pretty, too.
And she's real pretty and loves going to the jails. I'm going, okay, you're my kind of girl. She's been to every jail. She'll go down to Virginia Beach jail, the Norfolk jail, Western Tidewater Regional jail. I've got to go to the jail. Can I go? And she loves Lockdown. That's her favorite. I don't, But I guess if you're into prison life, you watch Lockdown. I guess it's pretty good. I watched it the other night.
Well, she's got the best viewpoint in that situation from being outside the bars. I'm sure.
Oh yeah. You don't want to be.
You don't want to be
jail.
in the jail system.
No, it's much more fun to watch.
Sure. So we've got people coming up with that, and then we've even got some people that are talking about the environment and some of the genetically grown foods and
Did you see that on that? There was a ballot issue in Oregon on trying to require that everybody that they label. Did you see that? And it was defeated by just a slim margin.
There was a ton of money that went into that too.
Yeah. And so now no necessary. I don't know the science on that. Do you? I mean, this GMO thing. I know you can go to Whole Foods and nothing there is genetically modified. I don't know isn't that just kind of hysteria that this GMO foods are bad for you?
I don't. You know what?
How do we know?
I'll tell you. In the last 5 years or so, I have become super concerned with where my food comes from and knowing as much as I can about it.
But why?
But I am not a scientist, so I don't have a background in being able to research and tell you are these GMOs bad.
Yeah.
But
Well, then what?
But here's the thing I look at though. I look at when I was a kid growing up, what kids look like. I look at what kids look like today. I look at, for example, something I read where the military is talking about going more towards robotic soldiers because the kids of today can't pass the physical fitness or diabetes test or things of that nature. And it makes me think, well, what have we done to these kids? You know what I mean?
But that's not because they're eating genetically modified foods. Maybe they're eating too much of that corn syrup, and maybe they're they're sitting around, they're not getting exercise. There's another way I would think of doing it rather than require. I don't know. I guess it gets into, and I wasn't really hip to the issue. I just saw that it lost. You mentioned it, and I just saw that it lost, and I think it was a big victory for the big food growers that use the GMOs. But the fact is that food is cheaper now, than it used to be because we fast feed our cattle and all this kind of stuff. So now I have definitely made a lifestyle change in that manner, more so from the standpoint of being humane towards the animals. I haven't given up eating animals or anything, but I do kind of like to get my make sure that my animals are grass fed if I can. And I've been reading about what's the story about these sows that literally never are able to turn around their whole life. So I do think that we need to. They talk about pigs, and they're pretty smart animals, and yet we treat them pretty badly before we eat the bacon. And I ate bacon this morning. I'm not trying to be a hypocrite about it. So you say, oh, well, you want to, before you kill the pig, you at least want to make sure that you are nice to the pig.
Well, no, but
I don't know. Is that hypocritical or not? But I guess I kind of want to make sure that at least, if I'm going to eat that bacon. Now, my daughter's become a vegetarian because of it, because she doesn't want to see the animals killed.
Well, have you seen Food Inc. at all?
No, I haven't.
Well, it's on Netflix. I watched it, and it did make me think that, hey, and of course, in any documentary, you can show one side or the other, but I felt like it was pretty fair. But it shows Monsanto, and I figured out from that movie, I don't like their politics as a company.
No.
And, if you're a farmer and some of those crops get into your seed, well, then now you have to use and buy your seed from them. So, and these farmers can't afford to fight, a large corporation like that. So they either lose their farm or they give in. And I think that you see that across the board sometimes with these big corporations that, for whatever reason, they're making sure their interests are met. And I think that there's a balance that needs to be found with all of this stuff.
Well, and I think that's one reason why I like doing this show, because I don't know about a lot of things that I want to know about. I'm kind of open-minded about a lot of things. I'm a lawyer, so I can take a position on one side or the other sometimes, depending on who's paying me. But no, you can argue one side or the other of any issue. But it's nice to be informed and really know as to what the facts are, rather than just have somebody come out and have a position that's unopposed. So what I have enjoyed about this show is bringing on, if we do have somebody, it'd be nice to do a show on food, and it is nice to do a show on the environment and on global warming and those kinds of things, just so people can kind of be informed as to what their facts are, and then they can make their own choices. I mean, do you want to eat food that's certified organic, or does it matter? You know, I mean, you can go to the food line and your food there is your meat's gonna be cheaper there than if you go to Whole Foods. So, you know, you're gonna if you want to go organic, you're gonna pay more for it. You know, and that's a big debate in the country today. Okay, do we want to give up fossil fuels? We don't want to have the Keystone Pipeline. We don't want to we want to stop burning coal. Okay, well, that's all good for the environment. But if people are going to pay twice as much for their energy costs, then we start saying, well, maybe people don't want to pay for, you know, so, you know, you got to pay to play, as they say. So if you want to eat organic food, aren't you going to pay more for it? And if you want to, drive a car, and let's say an electric car is going to cost you twice as much as a gas car, so you're going to go. No, that's why nobody buys electric cars.
I couldn't work on it if it broke down.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
There's not getting up under there and changing the oil or.
So
or
you know, it's
it's
all about economics, and I guess the question is going to be, you know, do people want to pay for green? You know, I mean, it's obviously we want to go out and put solar panels on our roofs. You know, it's going to cost us some money. We don't want to pay it, so we'd rather get our energy from coal. And at some point, it's going to have to, the economics of energy and the economics of food, when it begins to change, so that the economics of organic food get so the average person can eat it without busting their pocketbook, they're going to switch. Otherwise, people are not going to care. And that's what happened in Oregon. They said, we don't want to, and I know what happened. They put a lot of money into that, right? I mean, the food companies put a lot of money against it. But people aren't stupid. You know, you can't just have an election where the Republicans come sweeping in and just throw out all the Democrats and just say, oh, well, the voters just didn't know the issues. I mean, you cannot insult people. They're smarter than that. The Republicans came in. The reason they won, it was a reason. And the reason was because even though Obama had the Senate and he had a Congress, and he wasn't able to get anything done. And I think that you can blame it on the obstructionists, just say no Republicans, but a lot of people just blamed it on Obama because when he got elected, didn't he promise that he was able to work across the aisle? I mean, isn't that what we expect, the president to be able to work across the aisle and to be able to play politics and get things done? He wasn't able to do it. Now that the Republicans are in charge, they own it. Now, if the Republicans don't get anything done in the next 2 years, well, then when the elections come up in 2016, we'll see what happens. What are we going to have? More dynasties in America? Let's see. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton want to be president again. Do we want that? It doesn't even look like there's a debate on the Democratic side. There is no one out there that even remotely looks like they want to try to challenge.
Right. Who's going to be on the other side?
The lady in the pantsuit. I don't know. You got the Republican side. What? We're going to have Jeb Bush? Is it going to be Clinton versus Bush again?
That would be weird, but also at the same time, I mean,
aren't we tired of the same old faces?
I'm a little jaded where politics are concerned, so
I am too.
I really am.
We all are, obviously. Everybody.
I'd like to see a viable third party, but I don't. It doesn't seem like we support that, or it's been tough. Certainly.
Well, I think the approval rating for Congress was about 18%. The approval rating for the president's about 35%. So a lot of people want to say, oh, well, that just means that is Obama more popular than the Congress? I think that everybody thinks that the Congress and the president are pretty incompetent right now.
Well, it's funny because we've got all this technology, right? And one thing I've been noticing lately is technology doesn't really give you more. I mean, you get more things done maybe in a day, right? But it doesn't feel like it gives you more free time or energy or whatever. And I think people are so absorbed in their lives and they figured, I can't do anything about this anyway. They're going to do what they're going to do. It's beyond my ability to do anything to affect the outcome, and maybe they go and vote and that's what they do, but it really feels like you can't make much of an impact as an individual.
I'm still kind of a low-tech person. I was talking with someone the other day about trying a case. If I go into a courtroom and I'm going to try a case, and I know a lot of lawyers are really into this smart boards and get everything up there on show the photos. You go to a federal trial now, and it's ridiculous. As someone is testifying in court now, while they're testifying, the court reporter is typing it out. So the judge isn't even looking over at the witness. The judge is reading on his teleprompter the testimony.
Wow.
And that's, so it's all so high tech now in federal court. But you know what? I'm still just kind of like, if I'm going to want to show a photo of a injury, let's say I'm in a personal injury case and I want to show a photo to them, I would just soon blow up that photo to a big old 8x10 or a poster size and put it on and hand it to the jury and let them look at it. I think that's, I don't know. I think a lot of people would just as soon look at a photo that's right there that they can hold as opposed to look at something up on the board. But we are all so enamored now with technology. And, there's things we can do now with technology that we never, ever could have dreamed of doing before. So, I mean, I'm not giving up my phone or anything, or my iPad.
Right.
I love them. But I think that I think that you run the limit. There's a point where you say, put this thing down.
Yeah. Well, and back to a topic, something that you just mentioned before, though, you do read the books in their entirety when you get them, and
if I get them in time,
yeah,
Greg.
And when you get them, well, some of these things haven't even come out. I think you just got a bound copy that's going to the publisher, for a book that's coming out in a couple of days. But and so I think it does help you form an opinion or form a belief based on, hey, these people are experts in this field type thing. But look at the last 6-7 months, all the different types of people that we've come on. Do you feel like in your day-to-day legal practice that some of these guys have impacted the way that you handle things now?
Well, you learn things from some of these lawyers that you chat with, and a lot of times it's like anything else. You confirm the way you do things. If you already have a certain thought about how you do things, and someone else says, "Yeah, I do it that way too," or I think a lot of times when you are around somebody, you have a tendency to kind of say, "How do you do it?" And you go, "Yeah, that's how I do it too." We interviewed Bob Fisk, who was former U.S. attorney from the Southern District of New York and a really big hitter, top white collar criminal defense lawyer in New York. And then later on, we had Joel Cohen, who really wanted to come on our show because he saw that Bob Fisk had come on our show. But I got a kick out of Bob Fisk's book, because he talks about the camaraderie of practicing law. And I think so that was one thing that I got out of, talking with him, because, he's a real team builder. He's the kind of guy, he defends, when he's got to defend somebody, of course, he's got the luxury of having a large firm, lots of associates that he can put on different tasks. And so what he'll do is he'll assign one associate this task, another associate. He's a real team builder. He's like a hockey coach, which he is. And so he puts together a team just like he'd put together a sports team. And he says, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. And then by the time they go to trial, they kick ass. So that's how they win, because they are prepared and they have this team effort. And so I think that's I got a lot out of that with him. When we interviewed James Zirin, I got it from him, and this is something that I think has hurt Obama. When Obama was this whole thing about Guantanamo. And, James Zirin, who's got his own digital TV show up in New York, and he actually interviewed Bob Fisk right after I did for his book, and because Fisk wrote a book called Prosecutor, Defender, Counselor. But Zirin was upset that we're not trying those terrorists, the Guantanamo detainees, in federal court. And, the government wants to try them in military tribunals. And because I think they can get easier convictions for them. And they haven't tried them. They're just being held in Guantanamo without a trial, without due process. And it just seems, I just don't understand it. Because, Obama is a constitutional law professor, and he was elected president of the United States. And, unlike Allison Grimes from Kentucky, who would not say who she voted for. Allison Grimes was running against Mitch McConnell, right, in Kentucky. She was the Democratic candidate. And they asked her, well, who'd you vote for? And she goes, I don't remember. Well, of course you know that she voted for Obama, but Obama was so unpopular in Kentucky. And here she was running against Mitch McConnell. So she didn't have the guts to say, well, yeah, I voted for Obama, even though he's unpopular. She said she didn't remember. Well, no wonder she lost by 15 points. She probably would have lost by 5. But I guarantee you that when people say, well, you mean you don't even have the honesty to say that you voted for Obama?
Wait, she said she didn't remember who she
said
voted
she
for?
didn't remember who she voted for.
That's such an obvious lie.
Well, it was a court. Yeah. Would you vote for her to be your senator?
No, because I think
If I'd been
horrible...
if I'd been in Kentucky and I was a supporter of hers and I'd heard her say that, I would immediately switch my vote. Even if I didn't like McConnell, I said, at least I'm gonna vote for somebody that can remember who they voted for the last time around.
Well, it's such an obvious lie. I mean,
it's just
because
insane.
yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna run for office, why in the world is it that lying or pandering and is the norm? I mean, you need to come out. Why in the world can't we get leaders that are going to be leaders and that are going to at least try to represent all the people instead of the little constituencies they represent? And that's why everybody's upset, and that's in the electorate. And they say, well, you know what, we're going to give the Republicans the chance now because the Democrats have had their chance and they've been messing it up, at least in the Senate and the presidency. And I liked Obama, and I guess I still do in many respects, but I don't understand how he can just remain above the battle. I don't understand how Obama can. And I was riding in this morning. I was listening to the other talk show that's on 790, and it was an interesting call in, on that other talk show that's on the same time as we are, and someone made a comment about how Obama just appointed a new U.S. attorney. Did you see that? She's from Brooklyn, black female. They just appointed the new U.S. attorney to replace Eric Holder, and he just sent 1,500 troops to Iraq. Right? Just sent 1,500 troops, authorized that. Well, I mean, why didn't he do it last week before the elections? So, so it smacks of politics, of course. You're appointing a black female United States attorney. I'm not saying she's probably eminently qualified to be a U.S. attorney. And it certainly sends a great signal to the whole country that, we're going to appoint the first African-American female, attorney general. Quite a step forward. But if why wait till after the election? Well, because are you afraid your party's going to get punished for that selection? So I mean, these are the things that are going on in the country today. It makes people angry. In the paper this morning, I mean, it's enough to make you angry locally. I don't know how much how much traction this story is going to get, but how many of you ladies and gentlemen, read the Virginian Pilot this morning about our mayor in Virginia Beach, Will Sessoms? Boy, I bet you he's a little kind of worried. He's the mayor of Virginia Beach, and he's voted, apparently according to the story today that appears to be very well researched, that he has voted on many, many projects in the city council that have benefited his bank, Town Bank. He's the president of Town Bank. He's not supposed to vote on projects in which Town Bank is going to be involved in the financing, and these are construction projects, and they benefit the developers, and Will Sessoms, who is, went to school with my sister. He's an old-time Virginia Beach guy. He's a very popular mayor, and he's been mayor since '08. He abstained on some of these big projects. The big one at the Cavalier that's in the process right now of being developed, this one with Bruce Thompson and at the old Cavalier Hotel. He abstained on that one and was on the record as saying, well, my bank might do business with this project, so I'm going to abstain on this vote, a vote where the taxpayers of Virginia Beach gave $18 million in tax breaks to Bruce Thompson to build out that whole project there. Where the Cavalier is. It's going to be a nightmare. It's a shame. That gorgeous lawn with the tennis court and all of that, it's just going to be houses.
Wow.
And it was all, and then they're going to, and it's all supposedly so we could save the hotel. I'm wondering if we're even going to see the hotel when it's all done. And, I had Ed Power on my show early on. He's the publisher of Inside Business, and he was all gushing over, Bruce Thompson, calling him the most powerful person in Hampton Roads and all of that. And maybe he is. And he's saying, yeah, that's going to look like Miami, as if that's a positive. Driving by that Cavalier now, it's going to be just like Miami Beach. I'm going, now what in the world do you want to have that, along 42nd Street there in Virginia Beach? Or why would you want that to look like Miami Beach, for God's sakes? It's Virginia Beach.
Right.
Let's have it look like why didn't the city just buy the hotel and leave it as this gorgeous old classic landmark hotel? Why didn't the city pony up that kind of money instead of just giving it all to Thompson so he could develop it into houses and condos? It's outrageous. So Sessoms abstained from that vote because he said, oh, there's a conflict. He's abstained from some other votes. Now, this is not me. This is just a Virginia pilot. You should read it. I'm sure there's going to be follow-up stories, but I think that that's going to really have – that story just might have some legs. I don't know.
Did the pilot come straight out and say that they think he accused him of wrongdoing?
No, well, they didn't say that, but they said that it's a potential conflict of interest,
Okay.
that he was trustee on several loans and that he was trustee. He'd actually signed off on the documents. And his statement, his response is that, oh, well, I sign a lot of documents. And so I if I did something like that, it was inadvertent and it wasn't with intent. But the pilot, and once again, I'll defer to those of you, and if anybody knows more about this story than us, you can call us at 454-1650. And this is a local story of great importance, I think, because, the development in Virginia Beach has always been a problem. It's always been the big political issue. We had that green line for years, where people said, okay, we're going to draw a line. And the upper north part of Virginia Beach is going to be, urban, and the south part of Virginia Beach we're going to leave as this kind of country, old Princess Anne County look. Well, little bit by little bit, go drive to Knott's Island and see what's happened. It's all being developed all south of the old Green Line. It's developers come down, they buy up the farms, all those old horse farms down there are turning into housing projects. And now we find out that our mayor is voting on them. When it's written down in the law that it's a conflict of interest. They interviewed Colin Stolley for the article, who's the Commonwealth attorney in Virginia Beach. I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it's certainly troubling, at the minimum, to see that your mayor is, even if he's inadvertently voting on development, on city buying property and selling property at below market rates and so on, to individuals and developers and corporations that are doing business with Town Bank. Meanwhile, Will Sessoms is making $762,000 a year as a president of Town Bank. That's a lot of coin. He doesn't make much money as the mayor of Virginia Beach. It's a part-time job. And, I think we've all liked Will Sessoms. I think we voted for him. So hopefully he can explain, and it's all going to shake out and, all be explained. But it's troubling that it's right on the front page of the paper that he's got this conflict. And I think what's important, if you read the article, is that the paper was aware of the fact that Mr. Sessoms might say, well, I sign a lot of documents. I probably don't know everything I sign. I'm a busy guy. I sign my name a whole bunch of times. I don't know what my name is on, so maybe I just didn't pay attention. But I think the paper was careful to pick certain votes where that little defense might not be so credible. In other words, I think that's why they chose certain votes where he had a relationship with with that vote that might be just a little more substantial than just something that was accidental. Now, I don't know where it's going to go. I don't see the end of it. That's the first. I just read it this morning, and I just read the article, and so that's going to be a real interesting story going forward. And now, local, potential corruption story. And just following on the heels of Bob McDonnell, who was a popular governor, very popular governor, until all of a sudden, and you start thinking about it, you say, well, Bob McDonnell accepted some gifts. But, look at it in its entirety. There were taxpayers were not harmed by anything that Bob McDonnell did. Really. It was just a potential, right? So
Right.
It's interesting that if there's any traction to this story with with Will Sessoms, there were consequences. To the city, development that maybe some people opposed, and so on and so forth. So if in fact it's kind of a backdoor benefit to, Mr. Sessoms' bank while he's voting on, and he's made very public statements that, I'm abstaining from this because as an officer of this bank, I have a personal interest. If you read the paper on it and read the law, if you have a personal interest, the way the law reads is if you have a personal interest in the outcome of the rezoning or city council action, then you are to abstain, and you are to explain your reasons for why you abstained. Well, a lot of these votes, he not only didn't abstain, they were like unanimous votes. So I'm sure the argument's going to be made, oh, well, that was a unanimous vote. Didn't need my vote. You know, even if I'd abstained, it still would have passed. But when you're the mayor and you come out at the beginning of the vote and you say, I'm going to have to abstain from this vote, I have a conflict, and this is why, well, wouldn't that maybe send a signal to all the other council members that maybe there's something that they should look at too, and maybe it wouldn't have been a unanimous vote? So, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of question going forward on that one. I mean, I'm a little upset by this one. But, you know, when I saw that whole Cavalier thing go through, and we've seen this in Virginia Beach for generations now, that the developers own that city and the developers get what they want. I mean, you know, Bruce Thompson came in and built that hotel on 31st Street after the city. We had a referendum on that. We voted against that. There was a vote put to the people of the city of Virginia Beach. Should that parcel of land, there used to be an old amusement park there, Seaside Amusement Park. They tore down that old amusement park and they said, should that whole tract of land there be a park, a public park? And the people said yes. We voted yes, that whole area should be a park. Well, guess what happened? City council came in and said, nope, we've decided to rezone it and give it to Bruce Thompson to build this hotel, public-private partnership to build that Hilton Hotel. The people did not want the people voted that the Hilton Hotel should not have been built there. The city council voted. It just goes to show that the city council for the city of Virginia Beach for years and years has been in the pocket of the developers. And it's been common knowledge. And it's been one of those things, and as Will Sessoms publicly came out and said, you know, I'm abstaining from this project in the Cavalier. And of course, that was back when Meyer Obendorf was mayor, when they voted for that Hilton project. But it was a travesty, and you know, there was, you know, Carrie Dougherty, who writes for the Virginia Pilot, you know, she was horrified. She wrote column after column after column going, how in the world can we put a referendum to the people saying, what do you want to do with this project? It's your land, it's your city. People vote for that entire thing to be a park. The city council comes in and says, no, we know more than the people. You know, we're elected officials and we're going to do what's right for the city. So that's just an example. And we've been seeing this for years and years, all these redevelopments. You know, one more story, which is really fascinating to me before we go. We got just another hour. But, you know, my law office is on 31st Street, Laskin Road, about a mile back from the oceanfront. And for years, there was this old Fleabag motel across the street from my office. And it got torn down. And they went down, and the guy bought it, and then he went and got it rezoned for condos. And they were going to build a big condo project right across the street from my office, big old 6-story thing. The Navy came in and just objected to it because it's right on the flight path to Oceana. Well, guess who won? The developers, okay, as they always do whenever there's a city council vote. Why? Because half of the people on the city council, you know, work for banks, and the banks are they're going to make money, and they're not going to make money if they leave it land. They'll make money if they develop it. So guess what happens? They rezoned it, and the developer was going to build the condo. The very next day, the Navy went to the BRAC Commission, the BRAC Commission, the Base Realignment and Closing Commission, and they recommended, they said, okay, fine, we're going to close Oceana. And the headlines were 5 inches tall in Virginia Pilot the next day. BRAC Commission recommended closing Oceana Naval Air Station, the largest employer in the city of Virginia Beach. Why? Based upon this one rezoning. You know why? The Navy said, we're sick and tired of it. You have rezoned and rezoned and rezoned in these sensitive areas where we fly jets over and we're worried about dropping fuel or, you know, whatever. And so guess what happened? The city came in the next day and bought the land back from the developer for like, I don't know, $10 million or something. He made millions of dollars. He bought the land, got it rezoned, and then sold it back to the city. It cost the city like $6 million, that one little rezoning vote or whatever the millions. Somebody that knows more about it can call in and tell me how much. But it's just another story of how the developers get what they want in the city of Virginia Beach, and the people, it just gets, you know. Anyway, I guess that's why we have radio shows where we can, you know, rant about these things, because it's outrageous that these kinds of things go on. Anyway, thank you for joining us. I'm George Yates. I've been here with D. Thomas, my engineer. Thank you. And Greg Hall, our producer. And this has been Justice for All. The first hour we had listened to Pat DeCesar, our Hard Days and Hard Nights author. You can go to my website at ghylaw.com and listen to the entire interview with Pat from the first hour. And then if you want to, you can also hear my rant for the last hour. But hope you all have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday on Justice for All from 2 to 4. Goodbye.